In this video, we're going to be building a sophisticated filtering application for a rare book collection. This is based on a real software engineering take-home project, and we'll build it from scratch using React and Tailwind CSS. So let's jump in. This is the completed application, and as you can see, we can filter by genre, publication year, page count, and illustrated pages. And once you've selected your filters, they will automatically update the URL search params, and then you can also apply those filters to see what books you get in return. So again, it's a very simple project in theory, but there's lots of room where you can show off your technical ability and really stand out among other candidates. So let's go through the project requirements now. So here is the README for the take-home project. Dr. Ashford maintains an extensive collection of rare books in her private library, and she finds it challenging to locate the perfect volume for her research each day. She would like to build a web application to help her find the ideal book based on various attributes. Each book has multiple attributes, including genre, page count, publication year, and some books also contain illustrated pages. For maximum efficiency, Dr. Ashford would like to filter her collection by these features. So our job is to build a filtering application that will generate a query string fulfilling Dr. Ashford's selected filters. And so you can imagine that this query string will be sent to an API, which will return a list of matching books, and updating the filters should update the query string. And so we are not expected to return any data, and the final product will be the filter UI and a generated query string. So what are the filter specifications? So firstly is genres. So there's a fixed number of genres to choose from. And Dr. Ashford also needs to be able to choose multiple genre options. So all of the selected genres, any of the selected genres, and none of the selected genres. And the available genres provided in the code include the following. For page count, this is an integer between 50 and 1000, and Dr. Ashford needs to be able to choose books that have less than, more than, or exactly that page count. For publication year, Dr. Ashford's books have been published between 1800 and 2024, and therefore she needs to be able to select years after, before, or on the exact year. For illustrated pages, she would like to choose between has and does not have illustrated pages. For the technical requirements, this app can be created using any modern framework. In this example, we will use React, and we are free to style the application however we like. And all components have to be built from scratch. And so we are going to use Tailwind in this example. For time expectations, you should try to not spend longer than 4 hours on this task. And if you don't create every variation of filter, that is okay. The main focus for this exercise is how we tackle the logic of combining multiple filters and how you think about the structure of the query string. And for bonus points, we can also include parsing the query string on page load to restore filter state, as well as returning some filter data to demonstrate the filtering logic. So this is based on a real-world take-home project. And while it is simple, there are many ways you can optimize it. And so being able to show off these optimizations really shows you as an elite candidate and will help you pass that interview round. So let's jump into the code now. So firstly, the starter code is in the description as well as the solution code. So if you want to follow along, I recommend downloading the code there. So in our app.jsx file, again, we have our hard-coded genres, which is simply an array of strings. And we also have our mock books, which is an array of objects where each book has an ID, a title, a genre, page count, publication year, and has illustrations Boolean. And so this is the starter code, and as you can see here, all it is a div with a rare book library string, and as you can see here, this is what it's rendering. So I think the first thing to do is initialize the filter state. So coming in here beneath the app function, we are going to add in two pieces of state. The first is for our filters, which will simply be an object that includes all the filter states we need, as well as a Boolean for show results. And this will be used at the end of the project to determine whether or not we should be showing the results of our filters. So the first thing I want to do is go up to the top then and import useState from React. So import useState from React like so. And then we'll save it. And the errors here are simply because we're not using these variables yet. And so in our filter state, we have genres. So again, this is the array of selected genre strings. We have the genre operator. So again, this is any, all, or none. We have the page count. So this can be a number or null. We have the page count operator, which can be less, more, or exactly. We have the publication year, which is a number or null. And we have the publication year operator, which can be before, after, or on. And we also have has illustrations, which can be true, false, or null. And then again, that show results Boolean flag is to control when filtered results display. And because we only want to show results after a user clicks apply filter. Next, what I want to do is before we generate the query strings, we need to implement parsing them on page load, as this is one of the bonus features. So to do that, I will go beneath our state here and I will add in a use effect. So we are getting the current parameters using the URL search params, which is a browser API for building URL safe query strings. And then we are initializing parsed filters as an empty object. First, we are checking if the genres parameter exists. We then get the value and split by comma into an array, and we add it to the parsed filters object. We will also check for the genre op, and if it has that, we will add it as well. Next, we will do the same for the page count. So here, we will parse the page count with validation. So we will convert the string to an integer of base 10, and we will use nan check, so not a number, to ensure that it's a valid number. And so we will set it to null if it's invalid. And this is a nice defensive programming technique to prevent any errors. And we will use that exact same logic for the publication year as well. As you can see, we're parsing it to an integer. And if it's not a number, we are simply setting it to null. And for has illustrations, we will simply get it and set it to true if it is equal to the string true. Lastly, what we will do is if we have found any parameters, we will merge them into the filter state so that we automatically show the results. So object.keys, so we're iterating over all the keys over the parse filters. And if that length is greater than 0, well, then we can use set filters. We can then get the previous value and we can spread that previous value in. And then we can then spread in our new parsed filter values like so that we get that updated state. And if, again, we do have filters, we can set show results to be true so that any bucks matching the filters are automatically shown. And again, we have that empty dependency array, meaning that this only runs once on mount. And this is a key feature where users can now bookmark or share filtered views. Next, we want to implement the core requirement, which is generating a query string from our filters. So to do that, we'll go beneath our use effect. And what we have here is a function which uses useMemo. So this optimizes performance by only recalculating when the filters change. And I'll show you that later when we add filters to the dependency array of the useMemo function. We then use the URL search parameters again, which is a browser API for building URL safe query strings. And then if genres are selected, we join them with commas, so fiction, poetry, science, and then we add the operator genre op equals any as the default. And so we're going to follow a similar pattern for the rest of the filters. So you can see here, we only append parameters if they have values. So we check that they're null or an empty string for numeric inputs, and we return the complete query string at the end. And as you can see, we're converting it to a string and we're adding filters to the dependency array so that whenever the filters update, this function will rerun and we will generate a new query string. And the key thing here is checking again for numbers that it's not null and not an empty string so that no invalid values can be set. So let's also update our imports. So at the top, we've got useState. We've also got useMemo and useEffect. So again, we're showing we know how to use the core React hooks. So we can give that a save. We can scroll down. And so now what we can do is add in our URL synchronization. So right now we're updating our query string. And so what we want to do now is actually update it in the browser. So this use effect will run whenever the query string changes. That's why it's in the dependency array. And so you can see here in the URL, we can check if we have a query string. What we can do is we can get the path name, which will be the first part. We can then add our question mark and then append on our query string afterwards. If there is no query string, we can just simply set the URL to be the path name. And then what we can use is the window.history.replace state as an empty object, empty string, and with the URL. And so this will update the URL without page reload or adding to the browser history, which would be an expected UX pattern. So now that we have our core logic in place, let's start implementing the basic UI layout. So here at the bottom, I'm going to delete this div, add in some parentheses, and then add some styling like so. Delete this extra return. And so what we're using here is we've got the min height of screen. So this is the full viewport height. We've got min width full as well as width full. So this gives us that full width. We have BG linear to BR. So this gives us this amber to orange yellow gradient background. We also have flex justify center to center the content horizontally. And we have an inner container to give us responsive width. So full on mobile, 3XL on tablet and 5XL on desktop. And so we've also got responsive padding for different screen sizes. Again, showing we know styling best practice here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add in a simple header component. And again, header, it's got a H1 with the title and a small description. So if I save that and then go over to our app, as you can see, we've got a nice gradient background as well as the title and description. Perfect. Now that that's working, let's add the filter panel and query string display. So underneath the header, I'm going to open up a bit of room and I'm going to add in this initial filter logic, add 2 more divs. like so. And so what we're doing here is we have a white card with rounded corners and shadow. We've got a responsive grid column, 1 column on mobile and 2 on desktop. We then map over the constant genres array to create a button for each with conditional styling. So we have an amber background if selected and gray if not. And then we also have an on click here on the button. And so this will handle genre toggle to add or remove from the selection. So let's implement that toggle handler now. So if I scroll up above our return and below the use effect, I'll paste it in here. So this is the handle genre toggle. So what we're doing here is we're passing in our genre and we're checking if the previous genre includes it. So if it does include it, well, we want to then remove it so we can then filter it out of the genres array. Otherwise, we want to add it. So we will spread in the old values and then simply add in the new genre. So it is now also selected. So if I save this and go over to our app, I can now click on a genre like so. And as you can see, we are adding to the query string our genres as well as fiction, and then we have our genre op any, which is the default value. I can add more like so, and it works perfectly, and I can also deselect, so it's being removed from array. So excellent. Genres are being tracked and both the query string and URL update automatically. And so now we need to add the genre operator buttons. So back in our app, again, if I go beneath our genre filter here, open up some space, I can then add the genre operator. So it's any, all, or none. And so we have flex 1 to make sure the buttons are equal width. Clicking updates the genre operator in state. And so you can see here we get the previous value, we spread in the previous value, and then we change the genre operator to whatever one was clicked. So then if I remove a div here, that should work. So give it a save, go back over to our app. We can see here we've got an op of any. If I change that to all, the op changes, and if I change it to none of, that operation also changes. So perfect. The operator changes are also reflected immediately. Next, let's set up the page count filter. So again, come in here, I'll open up some room. And again, we're going to follow a pretty similar pattern. So here we've got a div with the label of page count. We then have a select drop down, and here we have our page count operator. And so when we change it, we will simply update our page count operator to that one. And then beneath that, I'm going to add the number input with the minimum and maximum values of 50 and 1000, as that was what was described in the requirements. Again, the value will be the page count. If it doesn't exist, we'll default to an empty string. What we will do then is on change, we will update the filters, spread in the previous one. We will then check the page count, which will be e.target.value. If that does exist, so it's not an empty string, we'll convert it to an integer of base 10. And if it doesn't exist, we'll simply set it to null. And again, it is of type number. So I'll give that a save and I'll go over to our app. And as you can see, I can enter in a page count here and it updates in the URL. And then I can also change the operation as well. Less than, more than, exactly, or more than. Perfect. So the number filters are working as expected. And so now hopefully you're seeing the pattern just repeat itself. Let's add the publication year filter. Back over to our app. I'll scroll down and beneath our page count filtering, I will add the publication year filter like so. All we're doing here again is adding a label. We will then have our select. This will have our publication year operator. And again, it's before, after, and on. And again, when we hit the on change, spread in the previous values, and then we'll update it to be whatever the value of the selected option was. And then beneath it, again, we have a number input. The min and max are different. The minimum year is 1800 and the maximum is 2024. Like from the requirements, the value is the filter's publication year. Again, defaults to an empty string if it's null. Then on change, again, spread in the old values. Check the publication year value in e.target.value. If it exists and not an empty string, we will convert it to an integer. Otherwise, we'll set it to null. So let's save it here, go back over to our app. And as you can see, I can now enter a year, let's say 2010. Perfect, it updates the URL. And then I can also change the operator to the before, after, and exactly on year. Perfect, that's working as expected. And finally, what we need to add is our illustrations filter. So back over to our app. Again, underneath the years filter, I can then add in our illustrations filter. So here again, we have our label. We simply have a button. We're going to render 2 buttons here. And it's pretty simple. It's for a binary choice of true or false. You can see the first one has illustrations. We'll set our has illustrations value to true if it's selected. Otherwise, set it to be false. And again, we change the styling of the button based on the current value of has illustrations. So when it's true, we'll show has illustrations as being selected with amber background. And when it's false, the false button will be selected, which is shown by the amber background. So if I add another div here, just to close it up and save it and go across, I can set has illustrations. Perfect. That adds it to the URL. And I can also check has illustrations is false for no illustrations. So that's working as expected. And so for illustrations, we also want to be able to have a selection to be able to clear that selection. So what this will do is it will only render if we have illustrations. So saving it like so, we see if the has an illustration. So if it's not null, that means it's either true or false. So then what we want to do is we want to add a button, and on the click, what we want to do is set has illustrations to be null so that we're not forced to either be showing or not showing books. So this filter will then be toggled off. So if I come in here, you can see illustrations is false. Then if I click clear selection, you can see that filter is now removed from our URL as it is null, and it will be filtered out. So next I want to add apply and reset buttons. So if I go back over to my app and I open up a bit of space beneath the clear selection button, as you can see, I'm just adding two buttons. One for apply filters will simply set results to be true. And so what this will do is it'll take our query string and it'll filter the books and show them below, which we'll add a little later on. Otherwise, we have a reset button, which we'll call the handle reset handler, which we'll implement now. So if I go up above our return statement and beneath our handle genre toggle handler, all we're doing here is we're setting our filters to their default values and then setting show results to be false, so no books are being displayed. And as you can see, we're using the same default values as in our default state at the top here, so we could break that out into a constant value and reuse it to prevent code duplication. I think that would be a nice addition. So if I scroll down to the bottom here, give it a save, and then come over here, as you can see, I have lots of filters selected. I can then click reset and it removes them. So perfectly, that reset logic is working beautifully. And to display the apply filters logic, so let's implement the bonus to implement the actual filtering logic with proper validation. So to do this, I'll go back over to the app. I'll scroll up to the top. Beneath our handle reset, what I'll do is I'll add in a new function here. We'll get a variable filtered books. We're going to use memo. This is for performance. We only recalculate when the filters or show results change, as we'll be adding them to the dependency array later on. And so if results aren't being shown, we simply return an empty array, as we don't have to do anything. Otherwise, we will filter our mock books. So for each book, we will go through all our filters. If I open up a bit of room here, I can add them in here. So firstly, we have our genre filter. So this checks if a book's genre is in our selected genres. So for the all operator, it uses every to check all selected genres match the book. Practically, if multiple different genres are selected, no book will match. For a single genre, it's the same as any. For the any operator, a book must match at least one selected genre. And for the none operator, a book must not match any selected genre. And by returning false, it simply means exclude this book from the results, as we are using the filter method here. Next, we will use very similar logic for our page count filter. So here, if the page count filter is set, we will parse to an integer with validation. So we'll use isNaN here. And if it's invalid, we will skip this filter. And so that is giving us that graceful degradation to prevent any errors. So for less, we will exclude the book if it has greater than or equal to the specified pages. If more is selected, we will exclude the book if it has less than or equal to the specified pages. And if it's exactly, we will exclude the book if it doesn't have exactly that page count. Beneath that, we will add our publication year filter. And so here, again, it's the same validation pattern for year. So we parse and validate with isNaN. For before, we exclude if it's published greater than or equal to the specified year. If after is selected, we will exclude it if it's published before or equal to the specified year. And for on, we will exclude it if it is not published in the exact year. And finally, we have our illustration filter. So here we simply exclude if the book's illustration status does not match the filter. The dependency array, we will recalculate when the filters or show results changes. And the key improvements here are we're using isNaN validation, prevents crashes from invalid input, and the every method for proper all operator logic, and graceful degradation when filters are invalid. So to now display the filtered results, what we'll do is we'll go down to the bottom here, and I'll open up a bit of room. And so we're now using show results. So if show results is true, we will now want to render our filtered results. So here we have a bit of title showing how many books are being shown. And then underneath that header, we also want to be able to handle if there are no filtered books. So here you can see if the length of the filtered books is 0, so our filtering logic is too restrictive, then we'll simply have a nice empty state here, which is telling the user that no books match their current filters and they should try to adjust their search criteria. However, if there are filtered books, what we want to do is we want to render the books. So what we will do is we'll map over the filtered books to create cards. Each card shows all book attributes. We have a hover effect and shadow as well. And so if I give this a save now, go back over to our app. Again, we have no filters selected. So if I go apply filters, you can see we have all 12 books, which are now selected. And let's say I choose only fiction, like so. You can see we filtered it to only fiction books for the publication year. If I set that to be 1900, as you can see, only books after 1900 are shown because we have after. I can change that to before, and you can see only books published before 1900 are shown. For page count, I'm going to choose more than 1000, and as you can see, we have only one book. And if I choose less than, we only have one book. And then if I choose has illustrations is true, again, we have no books. But if I choose no, we have one matching book. And then as always, I can then reset my filters like so. So perfect, our logic is working correctly across all combinations. So that's it. So really simple, but there's a lot of areas there where we're shown that we're a great candidate because of all the key architectural decisions we've made. So let's review those now. So we've got a single state object for all filters and atomic updates, so it's easier to manage. We also have the show results flag to control when filtering computation occurs. So this prevents unnecessary filtering on every keystroke. We have our use effect here, which will update our filters based on the URL search params. We have our query string here, which uses the use memo function, so it is only updated whenever the filters changes. Again, we are checking for null and empty strings here to ensure we are only setting valid values. And here in the use effect, we only build the new URL when the query string changes and using the replace state so that we don't get any page refresh. We have nice handlers here, which perform specific functions. And then for our filtered books, we are simply using our filters to filter the books to show the correct one. And all our logic for the operations is correct. And so in short, our query string generation, our bidirectional URL sync, our genre filtering, our number filtering, our use memo hooks, our responsive design, error handling, and inclusion of all bonus features would make us be a primary candidate to move on to the next round. You could always make improvements by maybe building more reusable components. However, this would be a minor thing. So if you want to test it yourself, the link to the original project is in the description. If you're studying for technical interviews, make sure to check out techprep.app. And if you got any value out of this, be sure to like and subscribe and share with a friend. It helps the channel out a lot. And I will see you in the next one.